Welcome to this behind the scenes look at first person shooter animation with professional animator Marvin Friedrich. He is a 19-year-old German animator, and we just got done chatting on the Animator's Journey podcast about his animator's journey and how he got to where he is now working as a professional. So this is kind of the bonus footage from that podcast episode that you can get wherever you listen to podcasts, called The Animator's Journey. Marvin, thanks for joining again, and I'll let you take it away and show us your work here.
Yeah, this is my most recent work. This is a AR-15 M4 rifle. These models stem from the new Call of Duty that just came out. I just think they're really beautiful, so I just wanted to take them for a spin. This here is a reload that I did probably like a week or two ago. I would consider it final. And I'm just going to play this.
I love that there's on the reload that he misses the first time.
Yeah, I wanted to add that little detail.
Yeah. Also, things can be too perfect in animation sometimes.
Exactly,
it's like,
yeah.
It's nice to have that texture there.
You can kind of see the mag kind of falling out as he like tries to remove it. It's getting stuck because it's a large mag, and it's just these small things that add up to this animation.
Can you talk about the camera a little bit? So there's some camera motion. How are you determining how you're animating that camera in relation to what's happening with the gun?
So mostly the camera motion is driven by where the player would look at, because this is game animation more or less. You would always have to consider where the player is supposed to look, where you want them to look, and then you have to match what's happening with the weapon, for example. So in this case, you can see X rotation is roll. You can kind of see it's tilting down. It's supposed to show that the player currently is taking the mag out of a pouch close on their body, so they're kind of looking down. Then you have the mag out, we call. So we have this mag out motion. Then the magazine goes back. It basically hits the mag well and misses. Then it goes in, and you can see you have this kind of like snappy reaction here. Then calms down, and then on the bolt release, when he presses it, you can also kind of see that the camera has some wiggles. Just going up, down, up, down. It's pretty simple.
And are you animating this at 30 frames a second, I guess?
Yes, this is 30, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
This is pretty much standard for game animation. Some people do 60, but I think that's excessive. 24 is not enough for an engine, more or less, to interpolate, especially since you're seeing it so up close. That's one thing about FPS animation. You have to be careful about every little thing that you change, because you can really see it. You can see the tiniest changes.
It's so big on the screen.
It's so big. It's like 30% of your screen. It's just the weapon. That's why it's important. Then you have Y. I think, yeah, that's pitch. So you can see how it like goes down really far to kind of emphasize the mag out motion. And the rest is just every time something important happens. So we call these, for example, we call them dead frames, because nothing's happening there. We split a reload. For example, this is a dry reload when no ammo is loaded. We call this action the mag out. Let me just move this camera. This action is the mag in. This is the bolt release, and then this is called the back to idle. This is where the weapon gets shouldered again. Not for pistols, but we still just say back to idle. And it's just the shouldering motion that the weapon might experience from just impacting on your shoulder.
Yeah. So everything's grounded in reality of like what real motions someone does. And are you like, just because we're looking at these different rotation axes, are you animating each of these axes independently of each other, and are you animating them all at the same time? Like if we were to look at all of them together, are the keyframes lining up, or are they kind of doing, yeah, they're all doing their own thing?
They're all doing it. So you would never want keys to line up, or even just curves. They should be leading each other. So if you just put, for example, if I shift this just by a few frames, and then you can kind of see how they line up, and you can already see that looks wrong. Back, and you need to separate what's happening. So you have your own like individual. I can't really describe it. It's more or less just trying it out over time.
Yeah. That's naturally what
learn
happens. Yeah.
So you have this. This is the roll rotation for the main weapon. This is in XYZ because roll is X in this case. So the roll is really important, as I said in the podcast.
Like, are you animating the gun action first and then the camera? Are you doing them together?
It's more or less an order. So first you would do your initial idle pose over here, just posing the weapon kind of, and posing the fingers.
And for people who aren't Blender users, what did you just do there? Like in that menu in the middle?
It's this is basic. This is the equivalent of anim layers.
Okay.
So I would just solo out another layer in Maya, basically. Gotcha. This is the idle animation. Nothing's. I mean, I could just show this one. These are all pretty much the same pose. You would pose the fingers first, then you would do the fingers. So all the small parts, like the magazines moving around, because of all the constraints. You have a constraint here on the magazine with the left hand, a parent constraint that just follows it all the time, and you would have to sort that out first, and then you would do the weapon movement, and when that's finalized, more or less, you start doing the camera movement in that order. That is more or less important to do.
Yeah, so you're not getting distracted by the camera movement when you're trying to do the animation or something. Oh.
Same with getting feedback. If you're asking someone for feedback on a first-person animation, turn off camera movement. Yeah. This is what I just did. Is basically just mute all the channels. So this is the animation without camera movement. You can see it looks really different. And it's important that your like main weapon motion doesn't change a lot, to make sure that this camera motion is just helping.
Yeah, it's not taking over. Like
it's not supposed
before.
To take over.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's great.
I've got some other animations, or more work in progress. This is a draw animation. I'll just leave this at 60 frames.
Oh, cool. And I guess you get a shorthand when you've been doing this for a few years. You get a shorthand on like, all right, this is going to take 3 frames, 4 frames. The shape is.
Yeah. It's getting the timings right is more or less. You would just play with your hands, just kind of mimic a weapon, and you would time yourself more or less. So I would have, if I use the idle animation, for example, I would just set this to a ridiculously high frame range, and then I'll just let it sit there. And when I'm done reloading, I'll just hit space or Control V in the case of Maya. Stop playback, and then I know what length this animation is supposed to be. Just so important, that range is probably going to change, because this back to idle motion over here, for example, like this motion here, takes a few frames, and you can see how it just. There's small wiggles in the end. I think originally I wanted this to be like 70 frames at 30 FPS, and it turned out to be like 97, 100, something around that.
When you're working on games like this, how much back and forth are you doing with implementing it in the game and seeing how responsive it is when you're determining the timings?
I think depending on what the design team wants, it's mostly preset times that we get. We can have a little more wiggle room. Like the main act, we just get the info that the main action has to be finished by like this amount of time, and then we can add a lot of like details such as that are skippable more or less. But the main action should be done by a certain amount of frames.
Because they could cancel out of that animation because it's so
yes.
close to the end, and yeah.
It's just a matter of, do you count this reload? So for example, if I'm in this stage, if I haven't pressed the bolt release yet, that basically means the reload is not done. And if I cancel at this stage, it's not going to count. But if I cancel at this stage, it should count.
Right.
And it's just like going back and forth with the design team, with the technical animators, because they are the ones that are ultimately implementing it in game, and just making sure all of that checks out.
And what game engine are you guys currently using?
We're using Unreal Engine 5.
Okay, cool. So if you're using Unreal Engine 5, how are you getting the animations from Blender into Unreal?
Just by exporting to FBX.
Okay.
There's the Blender export to, like, Blender doesn't like Unreal that much. There's some aftermarket add-ons that kind of fix the implementation of Autodesk FBX, which we use. It's called Blender FBX, and it really just improves the FBX export. And we just take whatever rig we have, and the same way you would bake a simulation in Maya, and then export, we just bake the animation down so every frame has a key, and then we would export. So it's pretty similar. I guess I can show how to set one up just from scratch, more or less.
Okay. Yeah.
Just like, this is from a private project. That was like a small first-person shooter that I was working on with a few friends. So this is a full body character rig. You can see there's like hip controls, torso controls. The meshes are just deleted because we don't need them for first-person animation, but you can see all the controls for the spines, for the legs. We've got IK controls mostly. No switches because we'll just stick to IK. And we've got a Zenitco PKP here, all rigged up, but not animated yet. So the way I would set this up, create a new anim layer, or in this case, an action in Blender, idle, for example. Then I would just move, sure, Alt keys on, yeah. I would just move it kind of into the frame. So have it like this, where you want it to be roughly.
Are you ever doing left-handed? I feel like everything's kind of right-handed.
It's all right-handed. The problem is more or less that you can't really respect, not literally respect, but you can't
accommodate.
You can't for left hand.
Yeah.
There's like akimbo animations where you have a left-handed pistol, but you also have one in the right.
Yeah.
Counter-Strike Source and all the Source games have an option to just mirror the whole gun, so they would appear on the left side, but then your whole gun is mirrored. If you were to make left-handed animations, you would need a whole like a new set.
There's like a bolt on one side. You can't.
Yeah, and then it's on the other side. It looks weird.
Yeah.
So we've just chosen to do right side because that's what most people are used to. And yeah, once you have your like base position, where you want it to be, this is also a skill and so on. Just being able to quickly pause something in the view. You would tilt it a bit because you want this barrel. Let me turn on some camera options. Basically, just showing the center. Yeah, you can see the center dot. This is where the crosshair in a game would be, and you want the barrel to just, no matter what position it is in. So if I reset this rotation, it doesn't really look like it's pointing there, is it? So what you want to do is just rotate so it kind of looks like it's pointing towards it.
Gotcha.
So this is kind of what you want to go for. And then you just go over to the hands, because this is basically the weapon posing done. You would just take this and pose. I don't have any gizmos. I'm just going to use gizmos for the Maya users. Kind of like this, and then just
That was the other thing.
roughly
I
align
wish
it.
there was. I don't know. Are there hotkeys? And because I'm so used to going WE, instead of the grab stuff in Blender.
They are.
Yeah.
Not, you can see them here. Shift space bar. They're really messy. It's like you get this menu here.
Yeah, you got to click it. Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta click over here.
Yeah.
It's whatever. But then again, you have in Blender you have this G and R, which is basically pressing W and then the middle mouse button
Mm-hmm.
To finally adjust it. It's up to you to decide what's more useful. This rig, by the way, is done by my friend Luke Laughlin. He did the skinning on this. I'm really thankful for him to do, because this is a really huge rig. That like there's the whole body meshes, they're huge. So I'm just gonna pose the shoulder over here. It doesn't matter, anything that's behind the camera, it doesn't matter because you're not gonna see it.
Are there any concerns about shadows or stuff like that? Or
there might be. Usually what the case is, we render on a different layer. So basically the whole world gets rendered on one plane, and then we just render the weapon always on top. So for example, if there's a wall, the weapon doesn't clip through it. So it always just renders up top. And we just disable the shadows on that layer. So they don't have shadows on their own, but they can, the weapon, for example, casts shadows on itself. That's usually what people do. I'm just gonna hide these layers here. So these are usually just the first person layers that you'd use. You would just kind of pose the left hand to be like this. So if you just imagine you were holding a really heavy object, because this gun is pretty heavy, you would just have this pose kind of, and you have to look at it, because that's the best reference you can get. Just look at your own hands, and you try to mimic that. In this case, for example, that's why I wanted to use this gun. This breaks, and that's kind of where you start to learn that there's a difference between character animation and first-person animation, because you can do funny stuff like moving the clavicles and moving the shoulders just to make it look right.
mm-hmm.
Move the hole over here.
I mean, I guess it could imply a twist in the torso that maybe we're not seeing. So
yeah,
you can just get away with translating them to get that.
But it's generally the notion that if you try to mimic a realistic pose, it's not going to look great in first person. It's always the same. If you try to do something realistic, it might work in character animation, or like if you're doing just like effects for example, for a movie, just tiny animations, that might work. But trying to add like realistic aspects like jitter, for example, it doesn't translate well into first person animations. And you can see how far I'm moving out this shoulder here just to kind of fake it. But in the first person view, it looks completely fine.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, you have to learn to adapt and to just break things. Or for example, if you don't have metacopals, like this one, for example, feel free to just move the first joint.
Translate.
Yeah, just translate translate it up if nobody's gonna tell. And we just want this left hand in this case. We would just want the inside of the palm to hit the corner of this hand guard right now. So that's what I'm doing. Increase the size of this.
As opposed to, I think, someone starting out might like put it
they
directly in line.
A lot of times, even just old animations like Counter-Strike, they have poses like this. It's if you just touch something, if you touch a gun just as it is, you would get a pose like this, for example. It doesn't look great, but that's how you hold things. But if you want things to look great, then you have to do a different pose. And what you do, you kind of angle this like this. This is all stuff you learn over the years just by trial and error, more or less. Just kind of make it touch the handguard in this kind of cavity over here.
Gotcha.
And then you take the metacarpals, move it up. These two fingers, the pinky and the ring finger, don't have to actually physically touch.
We can't see it in this.
We can't see it. I could scale this thing up. You
clip,
wouldn't be able to. Wouldn't be able to tell on the left. I mean, I don't know what it was doing there, but
if it was a different gun and the clip wasn't there or something, who knows what?
Maybe
because for the transitions, I guess if the hand's coming off, you'd want to see how it peels off or something.
It's just generally, if you can't see it, don't care about it. Really, it's not gonna make a difference. And this is a bit too far in this case. It's something like this. You'd have your pause, then you select all these shapes, boom. And you almost have a pause, just ready them. The most important part is the thumb, because that's what you see on the left side. And that's the most important part, I would say. You would kind of have so basically what you need to do is have this thumb
spread.
Kind of spread, so you can't have a flat. It's hard to show. In this case, you can't have a flat thumb just like this, but you have to angle it. So it's like, and kind of like this shape. Well, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I don't know what arc.
yeah. You have to do a curve.
Yeah.
That's what I'm just gonna say. Yeah, you need to curve your thumb like this, because if you have a flat thumb, it looks bad. It just looks
like there's
bad.
No pressure on there.
There's no pressure. It looks like it's just holding. It's holding onto it, but not. It's not physically really touching it. You can see this gap here. You can even tell from the viewport. There's a gap here. To turn on the rendered view. There's a gap there that doesn't really look great. So what we do, we use the first thumb joint, and we make it smudge against the handguard like this. It doesn't look great from any other's perspective other than the first person, and that's really important to understand. You will not get good looking third person poses with this, especially with this gun. This gun is horrible. But from the first person perspective, it looks fine.
Yeah,
it looks totally fine. And for a little bit of flair, you can do this. Just have the thumb kind of extend out, and then it looks like this.
Nice. That's
and
cool.
Then you would constrain with a parent constraint. This is just the Blender equivalent. You constrain this to the skeleton and then the weapon joint, and then you can see that it follows it. Hopefully, where's it? Here.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's basically how you start.
How are you animating that constraint on and off if you need to take your hand off there?
That's one thing I hate about Blender. Their
hard to animate constraints.
Yeah, it's so complex. You can't. There's no locators, for example. So you have to just stick with it. I can show you on the M4. I was doing 2 magazines, and that's what another horror. If you're starting off with first-person animation, don't do dual mags. Don't use 2 magazines because it's constraint hell. Let me find the left hand. You can see there's 2 parent constraints here. One is going to the weapon, and then one is going just to the magazine. So in the beginning, we have mag 2 in the gun, and the first mag just hidden. That's also one thing we do. We just put it somewhere here where you can't see it. Anything that is off screen doesn't matter. I just have this constraint following just the weapon. And then you can see it's between 4 and 5. It switches the influences just in this frame to the magazine. And if I turn off the constraints, if I look at the curves, you can see there's a huge difference between, this is just the translation, huge difference between this frame, this is where for the left hand now, between this frame and this frame, even though they're kind of in the same position. It's just that the constraint doesn't apply anymore. And that's what you need. You always need to animate against the constraint. That's basically the thing you have to care about. And then you can see it. He grabs the mag, drops the magazine and the gun, and then it kind of just disappears. And I stored way back here because sometimes you can see the shadow still because it's in Blender.
Oh, sure.
And sometimes you can see the shadows here and here. It was just showing up, so I just moved it back. And then you insert it, and you can see the weights, the influences of the constraints. It's just following the magazine now. So I can do this, but if I go back to the beginning, doesn't affect it. And switching these constraints is your most optimal choice to do dual mags. But yeah, other than that, it's just really straightforward. Just parent the left hand to the magazine. If you do not intend to do like complicated motions, as long as you don't move the magazine, like for example in this pose, if you don't move the magazine, it doesn't matter because it follows the gun motion. So you don't need two constraints. You can just do this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do need to move the magazine, just move the hand to the mag and then move it.
Mm-hmm.
And that usually works out. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, that's smart.
Oh yeah, one thing. Another thing that's really helpful starting out is that yaw is your best friend when it comes to adding detail. I can just mute this channel for now, and you can see this looks pretty. It still looks pretty good in my opinion, but it's just missing that little detail. And if I just put on just the yaw, you can see there's just a small wiggle. If I mute these, there's a small wiggle there. And if I add the pitch to it, it just adds so much more.
Yeah.
It looks more alive.
Character alive. Yeah, the jitter, the weight of the gun. And
yeah, it's really important that the yaw and the pitch are delayed from the roll. So I think Z is the pitch, I think. Yeah, it is. It is important that the pitch happens later. It's like if you try to, let's say the center of mass is right here, is where the weapon bone is. If you start moving something with your right hand, it's behind the center of mass, so it would pitch down when you try to lift something. So this is kind of what I'm emphasizing here. It has drags. Yeah, exactly. That's when the principles of animation come back, and you really do need to abide those. And you kind of see there's this kind of wiggling the mag out motion. You can see it's moving up, the muscle is moving up and then down, and then it has its impact. So having the pitch follow through the other curves, for example, here, you can see this is happening from it. Yeah, this is happening way sooner than, let's say, the pitch. So just delay that by a bit. That's the last thing I would kind of give as a tip.
Yeah. Big thanks to Marvin for showing us behind the scenes look at his first person shooter animations. You can follow him on Twitter or his YouTube channel, MA_RV. And if you want to begin your own animator's journey, check out Animator's Journey podcast to give a listen to all these other people's animation journeys like Marvin's, and you can learn how you can do that as well. I have a whole program that will teach you animation called Animator's Journey. You can find at animatorsjourney.com. I want to say Animator's Journey one more time just because I've said it so many times. All right. Thanks, Marvin.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.